New data slate day, I think. Maybe. This is a weird one. Big day for Big Hammer, of course. New detachments, points shifts. But then, shout out to Glass Half Dead, I saw there were some kill team updates, despite the website saying nothing, which, I mean, January's data slate came near the end of the month. This one is near the middle of March. It's kind of quarterly, sort of, either way. The website eventually did update, so we have things to go over. Remember, to keep up to date with Kill Team or to occasionally peer into the realms of other tabletop games, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. It helps fuel this old Space Hulk. And I hear if enough thumb buttons are pressed, the servo skulls might finally fix this floor's bathroom after what the lumberghast did to it. And check the Discord link in the description if you're interested in talking nerdy to like-minded worshippers of the dice gods. With all that said, let's take a look at the March update. I'd like to say let's take a look at the 1.2 update or something, but it seems Games Workshop insists that their update numbers reflect individual updates for the teams and rules, rather than a point in time the game is at. Please just make all the updates the same version number, I'm begging you. Turning to the core rules, we have a few pieces of errata, but a whole slew of QA. From the errata side, there is a bit of clarification that blankets all operatives that can perform a free action as they are incapacitated. It prevents this free Death's Door action from doing more than one option, excluding place marker, as operatives falling into the abyss of nothingness must place marker as this happens. Which is, I think, the purpose of this rule, to prevent an operative that could maybe perform a shoot or mission action to instead be stuck performing an action it is forced to. This Death's Door action also allows the controlling player to control the sequence in which this occurs. For those who don't know, the player that holds the turn initiative can usually choose sequence of rules that occur simultaneously. It's a benefit that not many talk about for holding round initiative. The distance principle of the core rules simply updated that the distance change based on the operative carrying the marker includes both mission and objective markers. A simple wording oversight that is now fixed. And lastly, a shift that derails a section of my Can I See It video. Hopefully people get this update. Prior to this moment, a single piece of heavy terrain based on angles could provide an operative both cover and obscuring, if the targeting lines fulfilled all those requirements. Now, in an effort to up the kill nature of Kill Team, an operative will have to choose which benefit it will use from the same cover. This will still allow multiple different pieces of cover to provide both possible benefits, but two operatives shooting at each other from opposite sides of Vulcus terrain will find less defense potential. The trick is the selection. Follow me for a second. The defender gets to choose when their opponent is selecting a valid target, whether or not cover or obscuring will apply. This makes for some odd concepts. Some operatives gain benefits from being in cover, like a bonus cover save, retention, or possibly other boons. But with this wording, a player could choose an in-cover and concealed operative to only gain the obscuring rule during the valid target check, a way of sort of offering up the concealed target instead of a different model, potentially. This will most likely never happen, as that may be a Mad Lad strat. It's just a mechanic that currently would, I believe, work. At least according to the wording. QA actually has some good points in it that you should probably go over. Things like permitting special actions to units with limited action potential, like bomb squigs. How extra damage is factored with damage reduction or ignoring. If devastating damage is considered to be part of attack dice damage. Final word clarification on retained dice not having a numerical value. Clarifying that rules that claim the terms when and is have two distinct moments of time they trigger. This time around, the commentary sets some decent standards. The universal equipment had a quick fix as well. The portable barricade can no longer be set back up after its unique move near other equipment, accessible terrain, or access points. I believe Beta Decima has some wording that won't bother this too much. But gone are the days of running a portable barricade over to a door to block it. Instead, the barricade is sacrificed to the ether. Moving over to teams, the Blooded gained 3 adjustments. Dark Favor, which normally allows a Blooded player to change what their enemy is targeting, clarifies that Any cover or obscuring bonuses that would occur can only come from the original target before the shift, no longer allowing an in-open operative to trick opponents into taking impossible shots. Keep this general shift in mind. This happens a few times over the course of this data slate. Bitter Demise clarifies that its trigger effect occurs before an operative is removed from incapacitation, just ensuring that it works in its core wording, which otherwise wouldn't trigger as no enemies would be within 2 inches of nothing. A similar shift as well occurs to the Brimstone Grenadier, making most of these fixes a sort of cleanup, more so than big changes in power. And again, we're going to be seeing a few of these as we continue. The Breachers, forever the punching bag of odd choices, now have to take 2 different gunners. Gone are the days of double plasma or double melta, because why not have a harder time against elites? The Chaos Cults received a few things. One is a change in terminology that I'm not 100% behind. Up until now, there was a school of thought that operatives can climb up or down, despite the rules claiming that when their base leaves a surface, they are immediately placed into drop. Many rules we are going to go over specifically now annotate that distance shifts are specifically for climbing up. I feel this throws a little spoke in some things and could have been more easily adjusted by claiming all climbing is only an upward action, but maybe there is a bigger plan here. Either way, deformed wings only work going up now. Faithful Follower had a similar clarification to the Blooded of only providing cover bonuses to the alternate target set if the primary had them. And Frenzied Demise also got the Blooded clarification of occurring before the operative is removed. I sense you are experiencing a pattern here. Absolutely, there were some big shifts in the core rules overview, but outside of that, most of what we'll be experiencing here are terminology cleanups. Another of which is with common characters that have the medic rule, like the Death Korps medic operative. Medic can still only trigger the first time if it has the opportunity. That still stands. They clarify that this occurs upon incapacitation, which is always the step before operative removal. It also further pushes that until the end of the overall action that causes this to trigger, that operative cannot be incapacitated. After this full prevention of unit loss, so just after the action is considered to be over, the operative gets its dash action. To further add to the fun, if the medic is part of an overall shoot action that involves it being a primary or secondary target, the medic rule cannot trigger. This makes grenade and blast attack use into small clusters with a medic a bit more of a struggle. You'll need to be sure that your medic is outside of blast range, but still within 3-inch medic range for maximum potential. This is also the update for the Elysidian Starstriders Rejuvenant and the Exaction Squad Kyurgent. Although, they also received a QA clarification that their Guilt Reveals ploy affects the distance they can be away from Super Conceal, so that's nice. The Farstalker Kinband had received the Climb Up clarification for their Bound ploy, the Gellerpox getting the Before Removal wording update to Putrescent Demise, but also a sad nerf that probably needed to happen. The Glitchling no longer receives the best version of Super Conceal, allowing it to be untargetable in cover regardless of order. Now the wording is updated to fully fall in line with needing to be in Conceal to receive the benefit. It was fun while it lasted. The Hunter Clade received the up-only clarification for the Omnissiah's Imperative ploy. Inquisitorial Agents got the medic upgrade for the Scion medic. Also some QA clarifying that absolute authority must be used to counter a ploy as it's declared without seeing what they were planning. So be sure to give your Inquisitorial Agent opponent some time to opt for the counter, like playing a filthy blue deck in Magic the Gathering. They also received a similar clarification as the Exaction Squad for gaining range towards overriding enemy Super Conceal. Kasrkin with a bit of a medic update as well. The Mandrakes, though, got some more specific changes. So let's see what my main team is up to now. In particular, the Dirge Maw had its interrupt further clarified. The interrupt occurs if the operative would activate, that is before anything gets chosen. It also cannot occur if the Harrowing Whisper rule triggers for that activation and prevents the enemy from going altogether. But thinking on the new targeted sequencing, sometimes abilities or ploys claim they can be used when an operative would activate. This specific placement of the Haunting Focus could allow for some interesting interactions, forcing abilities to be wasted or even fully prevented depending on who has turn initiative. So this will require players to pay more attention to other abilities and triggers that happen in the would part of an activation just before the activation is considered to begin. The aftermath of Haunting Focus also forces the interrupted target to go if it is still able to, as opposed to allowing the enemy player to choose differently if its plan is now suffering some kind of injury. The Harrowing Whisper also clarified its lack of usability if Haunting Focus is chosen to interrupt instead. The QA also cleared up when Soul Strike is used in sequence for understanding saves. This was actually something I've seen asked. If the target has a rule in place that allows certain dice rolls to work for potential saves or crit saves, those are all ignored, and only the Soul Strike rules are applied for whether or not retained dice are beneficial to the target. A good judgment call, I think. Remember that obscuring and cover can still play into Soul Strike shooting results, so there is still some counterplay. The Nemesis Claw had a bit of clarification for their Death to the False Emperor ploy, just cleaning up some terminology involving the effect to occur after dice are rolled against enemy operatives that have the Imperium keyword. As well, the Fearmonger had its Terror Chem poison rules adjusted to ensure that the damage is inflicted when an operative is activated. It might not seem like much, but since sequencing of equivalent abilities is triggered by the initiative holder, if a Farstalker Kinband with initiative chooses to activate a 3-wound operative, both Meat and Terror Chem would trigger simultaneously. It is arguable that since the Farstalker has initiative, they would trigger the Meat effect before damage from the Terror Chem triggers, ensuring survival. But if the Nemesis Claw has the initiative, it could take a shot at ending the Kroot's activation before it even begins. For those wondering, in the core rules under the strategy phase section with initiative, the player with initiative not only chooses first activation for the turn, but also decides the order of resolution for rules that would happen at the same time. The Novitiates received the before removal adjustment to their glorious martyrdom ploy, as well as the medic update for the Hospitalier. The same for the Tau Pathfinders medical technician. Their Savior Protocol ploy also had the cover and obscuring of primary target change applied as well. Phobos Strike Team with the Climb Up shift for the Reavers and Grapnel launchers. Helix Adept with the Medic shift. Plague Marines did receive the before removal shift for their Poisonous Demise ploy, but also a couple other clarifications. The poison rule does not affect friendly Plague Marines, a preventative measure for standing too close to one's own Blight Grenade. However, the Brood Brothers Patriarch does explicitly say that while mind-controlled, the operative is considered an enemy to the rest of the team. So, rules as written, I do believe that any applied poison might actually trigger and hold. Also, the champion operative had its grandfather's blessing adjusted, expanding the damage floor to 1 wound and ensuring that wounds recovered in an attempt to reach any potential cap for healing that turning point don't need to be exact amounts based on the damage triggered. The Ratlings didn't get skipped this time around, although it's mostly for minor clarifications. The Battle Mutt did get a range change for its early warning rule, 2 inches now. The Grappling Hook also got the Climb Up adjustment. They also got some QA, clarifying unit selection. Basically, each Ratling team has 3 potential slots for either a big meat wall or a free ploy for the battle. Or you can just take more Ratlings. They also clarified that Scarper is an every other activation situation. There must be at least 1 gap between each use. The Scouts received the up-only shift for their grapnel launchers, Void Dancers as well, although they also now treat the full climb as 2 inches instead of 1. Bit of a nerf for the elf branch of the Insane Clown Posse. The Warpcoven, after taking their last big hit, got a little shift to the Fate Itself is My Weapon ploy. The replacement dice can now seemingly be changed, potentially. The only limits are that it still can't be rerolled, but also that it can't be retained differently. This seems to be very detail-oriented. I'm wondering what all of you out there think this might be focusing on, as this dice will now be adjustable if it means becoming something specific outside of a hit or critical success. The Wrecka Crew also takes a shift. Their faction rule changed its second paragraph to allow for gaining or spending Wrecka points in the same action in any order the player chooses unless there were already 6 banked, preventing gaining in that action. And the Demolish a Detonate weapon rule received a pretty big counterplay rule. Damage done from that weapon cannot be ignored or reduced. So, no feel no pain possibility, no just a scratch. It's specifically for the Detonate rule though, so once per battle I believe. Still, a good opener. The Wyrmblade's unquestioning loyalty ploy was updated with the cover and obscuring changes for the new designated target. The Hierotek had a bit of a shift after their last round of nerfs, specifically a clarification for the Technomancer's augment weapon action, only providing its bonus to either the melee or ranged variant of the weapon. A little QA as well, going over how Steadfast works on the Immortals when it is faced with enemy APL reduction when controlling objectives. The actual effect will go through, but it will kind of interact with them as though they were APL 3. It's pretty basic stuff. As well, there was a little clarification on Magnify when it comes to things like smoke, just reinforcing that the puppeteered Necron is fully related to what is negated or held as protective buffs for the target, not as overwhelming of a change as last time. And lastly, the Hearthkyn Yaegirs had their minefield rule updated to be more in line with the more universal equipment restrictions, limiting them from being placed near accessible terrain. As well, their in-position ploy and its terminology updated to equate to all the super conceal shifts from some of the prior data slates. All in all, a few big changes here. In particular, the loss of same terrain obscuring and cover, a powerful tool on many maps like Vulcus or the Gallodark. Now there's a bit more choice involved. This does make the Gallodark a bit weird, though, as sometimes not all walls connect, so only some are technically the same terrain piece. Could be interesting. Either way, did you catch anything from this very abrupt data slate drop? Seriously, I thought I had at least another month or two before needing to frantically write this up and get it out there. Do we think GW adjusted the concept of climb and drop to be more consistent? Anything you think they may have missed, let us know in the comments below. And don't forget, if you want to continue the conversation, there is a link to the community Discord in the description. We'll be happy to have you. As always, likes for the like god and subscribes for the subscribe throne. I am Kimmerix, and I'll see you in the next one.